Welcome back to another Irish Hello live from Aidan and I's living room. Been off for a while, but a lot of things have happened. This is usually our Friday football prediction show, but I think before we get started on that, we've had a lot of baseball being played. Playoff baseball, October baseball, doesn't get better than that. It's one of Aidan and I's favorite times of the year. And we've got a lot to recap, and I think we need to start in the American League. Aidan, welcome, producer slash co-host. 15-inning game in the ALDS to finish off that Mariners-Tigers series. It's as good as baseball gets, in my opinion. That is my favorite type of game. It's just the pitchers are dueling, the defense is spectacular. You got guys in scoring position. It's the managers have to be locked in the entire time. How do you manage a game in that scenario? The Mariners were throwing out every starting pitcher that they could just to win that game. The Tigers had tons of chances they couldn't capitalize, and the Mariners end up winning as we had expected, as that's both of our American League champions. But Tigers gave them a run for their money. And it's becoming a trend now with Seattle where they looked like the much better team in that Tigers series, and yet they let Detroit hang around. Detroit had all the chances in the world to win that series and play the Blue Jays right now in the ALCS. And then the Mariners jump out to a 2-0 lead in Toronto. And just when we think they're going to wrap it up neatly with a bow, they let Toronto right back into it at their place in Seattle. And the series is tied 2-2 now.
It's been crazy, and Seattle Mariners fans have been dealing with it for years, just the inability to get over that final hump when they had that season where they lost to the Yankees after winning 100 and whatever games, just a ridiculous margin in the American League. It's been that for the Mariners for their entire franchise's history. They've never won an AL pennant. But going back to that 15-inning game, Jorge Polanco, he just continues to be the story. He called himself, he just said, I'm clutch. Like, I'm built for that sort of moment.
Can't argue with that.
And he is. And I was talking to Shay off air a little bit, but baseball brings out these players that don't necessarily shine all the time in the regular season, but they truly become stars in the playoffs. I think about Eddie Rosario a couple years ago with the Atlanta Braves. You think just back to last season, Tommy Edman. He dominated in the championship series, one of the main reasons why the Dodgers went all the way. And now you have Jorge Polanco with the Mariners, a guy that was under the radar. He doesn't pop into your head as one of their main offensive contributors when you have a Josh Naylor, a Randy Arozarena, a Gino Suarez, a Cal Raleigh. But he has been one of their glue guys. And now this series in the ALCS, it is ultra competitive, and today's game is so big. I really do believe that whoever wins tonight will win the series.
It always does feel like someone random shows up in a big way every single playoffs, no matter if it's in the divisional series, championship series, or the World Series, and that was Polanco for the Mariners. The Blue Jays, though, I mean, they're getting it top to bottom.
Yeah.
We talked about how deep that lineup was, and they have finally shown themselves back in Seattle in games 3 and 4 to tie this puppy up. And now they got their guy, Kevin Gausman, really their only starting pitcher that you can kind of really fully trust, although Max Scherzer just gave it his all, and Shane Bieber just had a fantastic starting game 3. Kevin Gausman's your guy. That's the guy at the beginning of the playoffs where it's like their rotation, who they're going to send out to start each and every game is a big old question mark after Kevin Gausman. He had a good game, and he had a good start in game 1. They ended up losing that. They need another good start from him to send this back to Toronto with a 1-game lead. And if they do, that might effectively kill Seattle.
Yeah, Gausman is fabulous. He really became an elite starting pitcher with the San Francisco Giants. I watched it come to fruition. He was always very good with the Orioles. He had a couple good seasons, and then he had a little year in between with the Braves, and then he went to the Giants. And that's where he became a bona fide ace. And they weren't confident enough to extend him and keep him long term, so he goes to the Blue Jays. And it's been up and down, but when he's at his best with that splitter, he's absolutely unhittable. And they're going to need him more than ever tonight to take down that tough Mariners offense. That park in Seattle has been playing like Great American this series.
It's not playing like a...
The offense has been ridiculous. They had, I think, 7 home runs in one game the other night, so it's going to be that much more important for the starting pitching to be elite. That's the one thing where the Mariners really have the leg up on the Toronto Blue Jays. So it makes it that much more important that your ace in a Game 5 that you really got to have comes out to play.
And the Mariners got to show that pitching prowess because they've been lit up in terms of Toronto's offense those last 2 nights. And Game 5 in Seattle, they need to win one of those 3 at home. It's a non-negotiable. You go out on the road and win 2 in a very tough place to play. Toronto has been nails at home this year. and Mariners were able to get both. And now if you spoil a shot if you're the Blue Jays and you spoil a shot for the Mariners to even get one game, you've already sent it back to Toronto. But if you can win all three, that's, like I said, that's not good for the Mariners. Brian Wu is I think the X factor. There's reports that he's going to be available tonight. I imagine we see him early, especially with Bryce Miller pitching. His last start was on short rest, and he gave it like 6 innings. I would imagine a very short leash for Bryce Miller, and Brian Wu I think we'll see out of Dan Wilson's bullpen very early on. And if they can piece together a dominant pitching performance, I still like Seattle to go to the World Series. And now that some of the teams in the National League side have been eliminated, I even with the collapse the last couple of nights for the Mariners side, I still like them as my World Series champions. I think they win tonight, and I think they go on to win the Fall Classic.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love their pitching. They really define what wins in the postseason. You strike a lot of people out, you have dominant starting pitching, the bullpen is plenty good, and then they hit a lot of home runs. When their offense is at its best, you really can't pitch around anybody. The back of the lineup is shaky, but even a Rivas has started to hit when he needs to, and they've gotten depth from Canzone and a lot of guys that you wouldn't expect. The Mariners, though, they need this one tonight more than ever, because I really view this, even though it's not an elimination game, but for the Mariners, it's a Game 7. You have to come out. You have to be ready to go. Yep. Because if you lose, I know the road teams won every game in this series, but Toronto has been one of the best home teams in baseball all year. You have to go back to a ruckus crowd, a whole country on one team's side. That's almost impossible to get done 2 straight wins in that environment. So I love the Mariners. I think they're going to win tonight. I think they're going to go all the way as well and win their first World Series in franchise history. But as I mentioned previously, they haven't even made one yet.
I know.
So that's step one.
They got to get over this big old hump first. On the National League side, Dodgers took a 3-0 lead last night. They got 2 more in Milwaukee to try to finish the deal. They have just been, it's really, Game 1 got shaky at the end, but the way the starting pitchers have come out for LA, it's been dominant so far. It's been really dominant. Milwaukee can't piece anything together. Chourio said it was a cramp last night, but Churio's been one of the only guys that has stepped up offensively for them. If they lose him for the rest of the series, the rest of the playoffs, then it's not going to get any better, obviously. And the crazy thing is that, and the injuries were a big part of this, but LA is pitching side just in general. Bullpen is still a sore subject for them, but their rotation has finally gotten healthy at the exact right time. And I don't know if that was, sometimes you'll see NBA guys and how they manage their star players. They kind of sit them out for the middle of the part and they make sure they are fully ready to go, fully healthy at the end of the season. I'm not sure if the Dodgers strategically were trying to do that or if they just simply got lucky with all their guys getting healthy in September into October, but it has worked. Their starting pitching has worked. Blake Snell has gone deeper into games than we've ever seen him go in his entire career. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, 9-inning complete game the other night. And they need that because of how bad that bullpen is. And the Brewers are just kind of laying down and dying. I mean, I was worried about their pitching because they had nothing past Quinn Priester and Freddie Peralta, but they've done fine. They've held the Dodgers to what they usually do to teams, low-scoring affairs that they are usually the team on top in that kind of situation, and just hasn't been any of that. The Dodgers are kind of beating them at their own game.
Yeah, the offense has just been poor. They've scored 1 run in each of the first 3 games of this series. You're not going to beat anybody doing that, and that's still credit to the Dodgers. Their starting pitching has been phenomenal, but there has been a multitude of times where the situational hitting, where the Brewers really lean on, putting the ball in play, moving a guy over, they can't do it. Caleb Durbin, I think in the 5th inning last night, had a leadoff double. They go pop out, ground out, or whatever it was, and don't score. That's not the Brewers that we've watched all year long. And now their backs are against the wall. The series is all but over. And I think the biggest thing for me, Shay, is the lack of star power in their lineup, the guys who should be providing the thump, not coming through. Christian Yelich hasn't been good in the playoffs since 2019. William Contreras hasn't done anything. And Jackson Chourio now is likely out for tonight's game. The Brewers are a small market team, but they still have good talent offensively. These are good players. Bryce Terang had a phenomenal season, but nobody has come to play when they need to. And you look back to that Game 1 with the bases loaded, just 1 hit sends everybody home. It's probably a different series if they get that game. But now the Dodgers are one win away from going back to the World Series.
And how do you think, let's say we believe the Mariners would have maybe an upper hand on the Dodgers. And I think what either of those American League teams potentially facing the Dodgers, unless they somehow blow a 3-0 lead, is that I think the game plan is evident. You got to chase the starting pitcher. I think if you chase the starting pitcher, then the Dodgers have shown that their offense isn't putting out the output that they are capable of right now, and maybe that could change. But if you chase the starting pitcher, then maybe you're down a run or two. That is totally in striking distance against that Dodgers bullpen. So if you get a guy out after 5 innings, after 6 innings, and you get 3 or 4 to play with against that Dodgers bullpen, especially night in and night out when guys might become unavailable, if a Trinan pitches back-to-back, then who knows what happens that next game. If you get to face those back into the bullpen guys enough and then start to get into the guys that are not good, simply are not good for the Dodgers, that anybody in LA does not want to see out there, then the American League team, whoever that may be between Seattle and Toronto, has the advantage. And I think I'd take the Dodgers over the Blue Jays just because I think if any pitching staff is going to allow the Dodgers bats to wake up, it's probably Toronto's, just because what's the likelihood Scherzer can go and do that again? Probably not very high. Trey Savage has been the number 2 guy, and he's really struggled for them. So starting pitching, definitely still a question mark for the Blue Jays, and I think the Dodgers offense would have the upper hand in that situation, and Toronto they're winning games offensively, and that's not going to happen as well against the LA starters. But I really do, because of that reason I just laid out formally, Seattle has the edge, I think, over the Dodgers.
They have the makings to beat them because of that starting pitching. And I think what a lot of people don't realize, and I completely understand the Dodgers World Series pick at this point. I think it's completely fair. But their bullpen last year was really, really good. It was one of the main reasons why they won the World Series. They could, after the 5th inning, kind of manufacture a ball game, shorten it, and rely on these relievers to come through. But they are so tattered, so banged up. They bring in Tanner Scott. He's not even pitching because he's been so bad. If you have a game where it's 1-1 and it's the 5th and Snell's pitch count is in the 80s and Dave goes to the bullpen, that's a game that the Dodgers likely lose. And the Mariners are able to get that pitch count up because their offense is good enough. But when you're assessing Blue Jays, Mariners, who's a better matchup, the Blue Jays offense is better than the Mariners as a whole. But that gap is not nearly as big as the gap between the Mariners pitching and the Blue Jays pitching. And that's why Seattle has that major upper hand if they would get to the playoffs. And then you got to think about Seattle hosting their first World Series. Like what that means to the fans.
Yeah.
That sort of environment you have to go into. Same argument can be made if you have to go into Toronto for a World Series environment. But I really do like Seattle. But I do believe if the Blue Jays win tonight, we're likely seeing a Dodgers back-to-back World Series champion.
I think I'd agree with that. And it's really the complete opposite, like you were saying about that bullpen. It's the complete opposite situation. They didn't have 4 starters like they do right now that can go out and give you 7-8 innings. And that's why we're taking Seattle to win the World Series right now, is because that's what they have. And so you would be
have the exact same thing.
You would be seeing 2 teams with the same strengths, and that's why you'd be seeing them play at the end of October. College football time?
Let's do it.
I think the first big game of the day in the morning, LSU Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt coming off a bye game. Only loss of the season is that Alabama game. LSU, they're 5-1 as well. It's a 10-17 right now in Nashville, Tennessee. And it's just another one of those games where it's like, can Vanderbilt show they are actually here as an SEC program?
Yep.
And so I'm reevaluating my takes on bye weeks, because I'm not sure if it's a strength anymore. Because Mizzou was just coming off their bye game, and the schedule dynamics were all in their favor. Alabama was in the midst of 5 straight games in the SEC. They're going on the road after 2 get-up games against Vanderbilt and Georgia. They win both of those. They're maybe looking ahead to Tennessee the next week. It all screamed Mizzou coming off a bye at home.
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen. Alabama was ready to go. Mizzou looked a little bit stagnant. And I'm thinking the same thing could happen here. I don't think Vanderbilt's offense will be able to get anything going against LSU's defense. LSU could be a lot worse than 5-1 right now if they didn't have Blake Baker and that Tiger defense keeping every team they play to 20 or below points. I I mean, even that Ole Miss win, when they beat them, was a very low-scoring affair. I think that's where the edge is here. I think LSU does just enough offensively yet again, and they hold Vanderbilt to a slim margin of points, and they win a close, low-scoring game.
I'm also on LSU this week. I think it also just comes down to it's LSU versus Vanderbilt. Like when you just assess the two programs, I don't necessarily envision a world yet where Vanderbilt is in a position as a program to win this sort of game. They're 1.5-point favorites. They're going to lean on Diego Pavia to make some magic. But LSU is plenty good enough offensively with a very, very good defense to go into Vanderbilt, a place that is the farthest thing from hostile in the SEC, and really handle business. I'd expect them to win by a touchdown, but overall, you're going to need a Garrett Nussmeier to play some good football. And Vanderbilt has established himself as a good team in this country, but, you know, the Tigers are a different animal. And Vanderbilt has had those big wins when they beat Alabama last season, but I don't know if I've necessarily seen enough sustained success to continue to pick them in these high-caliber SEC matchups.
And it was still just another 20-point output for LSU in their win against South Carolina last week. So their offense is still very far away from what they could potentially be and what we think of when we think about LSU. You don't think about the defense. You haven't in the last really 6 years since they won the national championship with Orgeron and Burrow and Chase and Jefferson. They were scoring 40, 50 points every game, it seems like. They're a shell of that right now. But their defense is legit good. Top 10, I think, is the floor. I think they are absolutely a top 5 defense. And that's going to be tough against Vanderbilt. But also, their running game finally got going a little bit in that South Carolina game. Yes, they only scored 20 points, but they finally averaged more than 3 yards a carry with their running backs. I think it was like 5.5 or something. That just needs to stay there, because you had the first half of the season where Nussmeier was just having to throw it literally every time because they couldn't expect more than 3 yards when they handed the ball off. And so if you have the running backs upping their production a little bit, their offensive line helping them out a little bit, then Nussmeier doesn't have to do as much. He doesn't have to make as many throws. That's less possibility for his bozo interceptions that he's very prone to. And I think that is what's going to allow LSU to take those next steps, is that they have a more balanced offensive attack. Because last year they didn't, and that's what ended up costing them a playoff spot. This year that would be the thing that would cost them the playoff spot too. I think they realize that they don't need to just boat race every team. Hand the ball off, have Nussmeier do just enough, and have that defense carry you to wins. And I think that's exactly the blueprint we see in this Vanderbilt game.
And it's gearing up for a really tough stretch too, Shay. You're at Vanderbilt, but then you're home against A&M, and then you're at Alabama.
They need
so
this
this
one.
is a game you have to win.
They need this one, absolutely. Noon 30, 12:30 game, Mountain Coast or West Coast, whatever the time zone we're in. Ole Miss, Georgia. It'll be at Georgia, 3:30 local start time. Ole Miss still has not lost. They are the number 5 team in the country, 6-0 overall, 3-0 in SEC play. They were sleepwalking through that Washington State game last week, about bit them in the butt. They were absolutely looking forward to this Georgia game, and that's what they're going to get. This is where game day is going. UGA's only loss is Alabama. Georgia, a 7.5-point spread favorite. What do you think?
I'm on Georgia, and I feel like that spread just kind of tells us all we need to know. Ole Miss being undefeated and still kind of getting disrespected on the road. We talked a little bit off air. I don't really know what to think about Georgia yet. It's kind of a hard team to gauge. You want to be a believer of Kirby Smart and that this is the same old Georgia team that has a strong defensive identity and they're going to give you what they give you offensively, but they're always going to be an upper echelon team in the country. And I don't know if I'm confident yet to say that, but if you go and you're at home and you beat a team like Ole Miss, that's when you can firmly establish yourself more than likely in that top 7, top 5 range. So I think Georgia's going to win this game. I would like Ole Miss to cover. I think 7.5 is maybe too many points with how they've been playing, but I do have the Bulldogs getting it done.
I was saying to you, I don't know if Georgia's good yet, but then I took a step back and I was like, do I know if Ole Miss is good yet? Yes, they're top 5. Yes, they're one of the best teams in the SEC. That LSU win was big time, but they were playing that LSU team when, like I just said, their offense hadn't been figured out yet. And I would be worried about the Ole Miss offense against this Georgia defense. First time Trinidad Chambliss is going to go on the road. because their only road game in the SEC so far was at Kentucky, and that was still Austin Simmons playing back in week 2 or week 3, whenever that was. So first road test for Chambliss. This is a tough first road test at Georgia. I don't care what time of day they're playing. Sanford Stadium is a nightmare to play in on the road. I agree. I think Georgia wins this by double digits. I think this is the game Ole Miss's defensive struggles, they've been great defensively compared to how they usually are, but they still have been being gashed on the ground a lot. That's where Georgia's offense has rested on this year. Even against Alabama, when they were behind in that game for a lot of part, they still ran the ball because that is where they were getting their yards against Alabama. I think they do the same thing here. They need to get out to better starts, though. Georgia has been getting out to terrible starts. You saw it against Alabama. You saw it against Tennessee. You even saw it last week against Auburn, where Auburn was completely commanded that first half. And if it wasn't for a 50-50 call on the goal line, whether he fumbled or not for Auburn, they might have just coasted that and won the second half.
Yeah.
But so Georgia has to get off to a better start here. I think they will at home, and then once they do that, if they get an early lead, then you can just really lean on this Ole Miss defense and run the ball down their throats. And I think that's what's going to happen. I got the Bulldogs winning pretty handily, I think. I think this is the slap in the face moment for Ole Miss.
They're going to have one of them. And if it's on the road at Georgia, too, it's not like the voters are going to
It's one of the more excusable slaps in the face. Exactly. A little bit later on in the day, we get another SEC matchup, Tennessee-Alabama. The 4:30 slate is fantastic. You have Tennessee, Alabama, USC, Notre Dame, and Utah, BYU, all kicking off around that time. Let's start with Tennessee-Bama. This is the third Saturday in October rivalry. Alabama has more than figured it out since their week 1 loss to Florida State. They are not even sniffing that same team. It's a completely different team. And again, I think this is I don't think either one of those last 2 games were in blowout fashion, but I think this is another handed victory for the home team. I have the Crimson Tide beating Tennessee. Tennessee's only loss was to Georgia. They haven't really been slapped in the face like we just talked about with Ole Miss. I think this is the wake-up moment for them. That secondary has been bad for Tennessee. It has been bad. And they've been able to get after the quarterback. I think they might lead the SEC in sacks, but the secondary has been bad. So it kind of measures up very similarly to what Alabama just faced, a weaker secondary on the defense. And if you can give Ty Simpson just enough protection, which so far teams against Tennessee have, despite the pass rush by the Vols, they've still been able to air the ball out, opposing teams have. So I think if anybody's going to do that in the country, it's Ty Simpson, who might be my favorite quarterback right now in the nation. I think he's just going to pick apart the Tennessee secondary. And I know Tennessee's offense has been great. Aguilar's having an incredible season, way better than I thought he would perform. But again, this is another animal in Alabama's defense. Aguilar going on the road. I think this has, out of any of the games we're going to talk about, this has the makings of the biggest margin of victory for a team.
Yeah, I'm all on Alabama as well. I think they win by double digits. Ty Simpson just continues to impress. As Shay mentioned, when he gets a clean pocket, he's one of the best, if not the best, quarterback in the country. And this QB class is so intriguing because there really isn't a consensus number 1 pick. It feels like each week the quarterbacks are vying to get that top spot. And I see it changing every week. It's Fernando Mendoza. It was Lenora Sellers at the beginning of the year. Dante Moore. Now it's Ty Simpson. So a full sample size of a collegiate season is really when we're going to get a good idea of who is at that top. And last week, I think if there was going to be a game over the last 4 that Alabama was going to lose in that stretch, especially after beating Georgia, it was going to be at Mizzou. And since they got that done, that really will kickstart some momentum coming back home against a Tennessee team that has been shaky, hasn't really dominated any quality opponent. So I have Alabama getting it done.
I agree. If the scheduling dynamics were going to rear their head, 5 straight games in the SEC, it was on the road after 2 big ones before this Tennessee game, like I was saying earlier, and it just didn't happen. Alabama's playing way cleaner brand of football. That was the thing with DeBoer, is like last year, the other team had less penalties than them in every single game. And that same thing happened in the Florida State loss on the road. That's just not happening anymore. They figured it out. The coaching staff figured it out. Ty Simpson is the perfect quarterback for DeBoer and Grubb. And I think even if Jam Miller misses this game, he's in concussion protocol after getting out of that Mizzou game later on. I think even if he misses this game, I still think Ty Simpson's able to do enough with his arm to, I think they score, I'm going to say they score at will. I think they score at will in this game. I think this could be a 40-point offensive output for Alabama.
I see a lot of similarities of Ty Simpson and Mac Jones and where they have their success with the clean pocket. Ty Simpson is a much more mobile runner, but just as something to keep in mind, at that next level, whenever Ty Simpson gets drafted, if he gets in a proper system, he's going to thrive. I don't necessarily see him turning around a franchise, but if he gets in that proper system, he will be a very, very good quarterback in the league for a long time.
And also, reason I was skeptical on Aguilar this year is he's led the country twice in interceptions at App State, and now he goes into the SEC. And I'm like, all right, that can't be a recipe for success. And yes, Heupel's system he really does limit interceptions, but he's up to 5 now. Aguilar's up to 5 after not really turning the ball over at all in the beginning of the season. Just saw an Alabama secondary that picked off Bo Perbula twice in big-time moments of that game. I think we see some of that too. I think Tennessee and Aguilar might give Alabama some short fields with some turnovers, and that's not going to be pretty for them either. USC Notre Dame is another home team favorite. 9.5 points Notre Dame is on the spread against USC. USC coming off a big win. Notre Dame coming off 4 straight wins after they opened the season 0-2. I'm going to take the home team again. I like USC this year. I really like Jaden Mayava, but Notre Dame is kind of going to be in desperation mode the entire season after their 0-2 start because they know their schedule is weak. They know that they really needed one of those 2 wins in the first part of the season to kind of give them that insurance policy for the playoffs the rest of the way. Just because they're not in a conference, they're not going to have a conference championship game to bolster their resume. This is their only tough test of the season. If they lose this, they're out of the playoffs. They are. A 9-3 Notre Dame team, even if they win all the other ones, a 9-3 Notre Dame team where they lost their 3 biggest games of the year will not be in the playoffs. So I think they know that. They're at home. They need this one, and they're going to get it.
I'm also all over Notre Dame. These spreads are so telling. I mean, when you give them a touchdown at home in a matchup against a USC team that's been very good, that kind of tells you all you need to know. And Coach Freeman and the rest of those guys, they seemingly figure it out after a rough start, and they're still such a well-oiled machine overall. They're not going to shoot themselves in the foot. So I do have the Fighting Irish coming out on top.
It's also USC. They've been able to hurt teams through the year. That's what they've been doing is Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane, and Jaden Mayava. That's how they've been beating teams. Notre Dame's secondary has really figured things out. They've only allowed a combined 27 points, I think, the last 3 weeks after getting gashed in that Texas A&M game. I think they're going to be able to limit the USC star playmakers on the outside, and that's why Notre Dame's going to win this one. Let's finish in the Big 12. Talk about Utah BYU. Utah, after that Texas Tech loss, has looked great. They dominated ASU and backup quarterback Jeff Sims last week at home. Now they go on the road to BYU. This is the Holy War game, big-time rivalry in Provo. BYU has not lost yet. 15th ranked in the country, 6-0 overall, 3-0 in conference play. I'm just going to come out. I think this is where that ends. I think there is a huge difference in talent on these rosters. Utah is the far more talented team. They're the far more physical and dominant team up front. They have the better quarterback. It's still a freshman, Bear Bachmeier quarterback, true freshman, starting for BYU. He's been great, but against a defense like Utah, I think this is where it's a welcome to college football moment for him. Even at home, I think Utah gets it done. I've been using wake up moment a lot, but they had the snapback moment, getting their butts beat at home against Texas Tech. I think that kind of set them on the right track the rest of the year. I think they handle business against the Cougars.
Yeah, I like Utah here as well. I think BYU has been one of the more quiet, undefeated teams in the country, one of the more quiet top 15 teams, just because of the lack of people they've played. They've really gone under the radar in these matchups. This is the first one that's going to be garnering a lot of attention, have a lot of eyeballs on it. And Utah just looked so dominant against an ASU team that was depleted last week. I understand that. But they get so much push with that offensive line. They run the ball down anybody's throat. And the defense is also solid. This is just where the more experienced team, I think, gets it done, even though they're on the road.
How many passing attempts did Dampier even have? Like 12?
He doesn't need to throw the ball.
He only threw the ball like a dozen times.
He doesn't need to
like
throw
a 42 point output. So I think they can do something similar against BYU. BYU's always they're always great in the trenches just because that's been their identity forever, but they meet their match in games like this against Utah, and I think that shows here.
Yeah.
Before we move on to NFL, ASU hosting Texas Tech. This was going to be a huge game. Possibly if Leavitt plays last week and ASU's able to beat Utah on the road. Instead, it's kind of a game that's taken the back seat, the back burner, in a lot of the big college football games of the week. I still think that this is flying under the radar, and this could be a very, very good game in Tempe. Sam Leavitt expected back. We don't know if it's going to be Baron Morton or Will Hammond for Texas Tech. I don't think it matters. Both of them have looked fantastic. This is going to be a great game, no matter who is starting for the Red Raiders. It's a good team, and usually we sit here and I pick the Sun Devils, especially at home. They haven't lost at home since 2023. It's been a while. I'm afraid Tempe Sun Devil fans are going to be reminded of what it feels like.
Yeah.
Texas Tech is just too dang good. And I think if it was any other team in the Big 12, I really would pick ASU, bouncing back a bit, after a big loss against Utah. They get their starting quarterback back. The reason I'm not going that route in this one is because of the Texas Tech defensive line. You talk about the oil money building this roster, and it really has. They have bought happiness pretty much in Lubbock. But where that has been seen the most is on the defensive side of the ball, and especially with who they have going after the quarterback. And you look at the ASU offensive line, they've struggled with that last week. Now you lose Ben Coleman. He's one of, if not the leader on that offensive line. He's out for the rest of the season. You had a lot of switching around before that even happened last week, with Obigbo being brought out of the starting left guard spot. You moved Ben Coleman over to left guard. Wade Helton was the starting center now. Who is Wade Helton going to play?
I believe he's going to be the starting center.
It's just a lot of switcherooing around, and that's not good against a Texas Tech defensive line that is this dominant. And I think that is where they win the football game.
And that injury report, too, for ASU, it's
long.
Essay.
It's lengthy.
And it's so difficult to overcome that many injuries against this quality of an opponent. I would normally sit here and pick ASU as well in this spot, but I'm on Texas Tech. They're simply just the better football team. And Arizona State this season hasn't shown enough yet to pick them against this good of an opponent. They haven't converted enough red zone opportunities. They haven't been efficient enough offensively. And the pass rush is either really good or it's poor, as we saw last week against Utah. So there's a million question marks, and usually that's not the greatest thing. I do think ASU covers 7.5, though. I think this is going to be a really good game.
Yeah.
Because when Sam Leavitt's on the field, the offense is completely different. I talked to you a little bit about it off the show. It's real when you don't have your starting quarterback to come into a ball game and expect to lose. I know it sounds crazy, but even subconsciously in the back of your mind, you're almost accepting defeat before you start. You're almost accepting defeat when you see the weather report, accepting defeat when Jeff Sims is out there. And now, taking that loss into account, they're going to have that much more motivation coming into tomorrow at Mountain America Stadium. I think it truly is going to be a phenomenal contest.
And where there was no kind of backup quarterback situation was on that ASU defense last week. And they got embarrassed. No matter who is the signal caller for the ASU offense, no matter how much they're struggling on that side of the ball when you're at Utah, it takes nothing away from how bad that ASU defense was last week. And I think they get it together because that is a really good unit. And I think that coming into the year, I think that was their strongest unit. You talk about a team that has Levin and Tyson, that defense is where they made a lot of their money last year, and I think that's where they need to make their money coming back from a loss like that. So I think that when you couple the environment with an ASU defense that is going to be hungry and ready to show that they are better than what they just put out on the field last week, I think they make it tough for Texas Tech. I legitimately think this is going to be Texas Tech is going to struggle the hardest offensively that they have all season. I just don't know if it matters with how good their defense has been, and I think they'll do just enough offensively to win this football game. However, if we're talking about a game where it might be won on the Texas Tech defensive line and getting pressure on Sam Leavitt, then who better to have if you're a Devils fan than a guy that's one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best in the entire country, of doing things off script, of moving around in the pocket, moving around the entire length of the field, making things happen with his legs. He's going to have to do that. And
Yep.
I hope his ankle is fine because he's going to have to do that.
He will. Going to be a great one. Can't wait.
NFL, which games are you looking at?
Oh, man. It's a good slate.
It is.
There's a lot of good games. The first one that jumps out to me, I think, from an intriguing perspective, is Eagles-Vikings.
Can you believe this is I know it's at Minnesota. It's a tough place to play. Philly's only a 2.5-point favorite.
I know. It's crazy.
We've been talking about
you wonder.
spreads giving us hints and that we should listen to Vegas in situations like this. I think I know what you're going to say, and I agree with you. I think Philly blows this game out.
I really do. And the Vikings just don't have a good enough offense and a good enough quarterback to really take control of this game from the beginning and beat a Philadelphia team that is fine playing that brand of football. Philly can win in a multitude of ways. They've lost 2 straight after winning 4 straight to begin the season. This is a prime bounce back spot. If they're on the road against a juggernaut, then we're having a different talk. And we're not just picking the Eagles because it's a bounce back spot. But I don't think the Vikings are very good, to be frank. And the Eagles are. They're still a quality team that's one of the best in the NFC. I think they win by a touchdown plus here, and I'm pretty confident in it.
It's Philly coming off of 2 losses, but a long week. They haven't played since Thursday night of last week. I think let's just keep on the slap in the face, getting things figured out train. I think that was Philly slap in the face, losing to a division rival in prime time in embarrassing fashion against the Giants last week. Now they wake up. Now I think there are smart enough people on that team to figure things out because the amount of talent that's on that roster is too good to be losing to the Giants and too good to have all these narratives spreading about or swirling around about how dysfunctional they are on offense, which they have looked pretty dysfunctional on offense. I think they do get things figured out. It's a tough Minnesota defense to try to do that against, especially at their place. But on the other side of the ball, are we sure the Vikings scored 10 points in this game? Like it's Carson Wentz and the Vikings. They struggled to score against the Browns.
Yeah.
They're going to be going up against a tough defense in the Eagles. I don't even know if they score enough points to win any kind of game, no matter who they're playing. So I'm on the Eagles for that reason. I think even if the offense hasn't figured things out yet, the defense is still plenty good to jump out. Colts-Chargers is a very intriguing game to me.
Yeah.
Colts at LA. Chargers have been injury ravaged, offensive line especially. No running back in Amarion Hampton. No backup running back in Najee Harris. It's had to rest on Justin Herbert to throw the football when he hasn't had very much time to do it. I know Chargers are favored by 1.5. I know they're at home, and I know people are kind of still waiting on the Colts to kind of sputter out and show, maybe regress to the mean and show that they're not as good of a football team as the 5-1 record shows. I don't know if it's this week. I like Indianapolis in this game again.
I'm all over Indy as well. I really like them on the road. I just think that the talent discrepancy with how healthy Indianapolis has been and their offense has been phenomenal, they're just better than the Chargers. I think they're going to walk in there.
I think right now they are better than the Chargers, yeah.
And it's unfortunate for Justin Herbert after this amazing start. The Chargers look so good that he has to lose a Joe Alt, and the offensive line takes a big hit, and then now no Omarion Hampton. Their injuries are building up, and their identity is going to be offense. Even though their defense, with Jim Harbaugh being a mastermind on that side of the ball, is so talented, when you think about the Chargers' identity, it's the offense because of their star quarterback in Justin Herbert. And when he cannot be at his top ability because of these injuries, it really is going to take a big hit for them, and the Colts are good. I think they get it done and move to 6-1.
Remember last time they were playing in SoFi Stadium, what did we say about that game? It was at the Rams. This is the test. This is the week where they're like, all right, who are the Colts?
Yeah.
And we said that even if they don't win, we can see that they can prove that they're a legit team in the NFL, and they did. It was a close, very good game against the Rams. They had their chances to win, close margin of defeat. And from that moment on, I was on Indy, and I'm going to keep riding that train against the Chargers. Speaking of that other LA team against the Jaguars, the London game is actually one I might consider waking up for.
Yes.
6:30 a.m. for us, which it's going to be tough on a Sunday after a Saturday night. But I might have to wake up for this. Rams and Jaguars are two teams this is a very good game. Jaguars have impressed me. They've beaten the Chiefs. They're 4-2. They figured a lot of things out since they lost to Jake Browning and the Bengals all those weeks ago. This is a 3.5-point Rams spread. I'm on the Jaguars for the upset. I really am. The Rams offense hasn't looked like very slow start against the 49ers and what was a depleted defense, a depleted team in general. They didn't wake up until the very end of that game, and then it wasn't enough to win. Their offense didn't look great against a even more depleted Baltimore team last week.
Yeah.
They only put up 17 points.
Yep.
I'm worried about the offense a little bit. That Jacksonville defense has been good. It has been very good. And also the playing in London thing, I'm factoring that in. Jacksonville plays, I think, 2 games there every year, right?
Yeah.
They know how to do this. They know how to go to London in the middle of an NFL season and play games there. And I think that is actually a legitimate advantage for them in this situation, in this dynamic. It's an LA team that was playing on the East Coast in Baltimore. They didn't go back home. They have not been back in LA at home, practicing in their training facilities, getting their normal rest and recovery work done, seeing their families, getting on their usual schedules. They haven't been on their routines in a very long time. They had to practice, I believe they practiced at Camden Yards, the Baltimore Orioles stadium. Like that, they have no semblance of routine right now. I'm not sure how that bodes for their offense figuring things out. Now you go to London, a whole other continent, to play a Jaguars team that is used to doing that. I think this is in Jacksonville's favor. I think 3.5 points is just too much. Rams are 3.5-point favorites.
Yeah.
I think that's too much.
I like that pick. I actually am on the Rams, though, and a lot of it just has to do with, I mean, you talked about how the Rams offense didn't impress, but I thought that the Jaguars offense was equally as bad last week against Seattle. And
It was.
both, when I think about who am I going to trust more, and it's not that Jacksonville isn't established enough yet, but it's Matthew Stafford in a game like this where you feel like the Rams need to keep that momentum going in an NFC West that is ultra competitive. That's where I'm leaning on LA to go to London and get the win. But Shay's not kidding. That is a game, and the first one overseas that is really like, okay, let's wake up and let's watch some football, because it's 2 4-2 teams with a lot of buzz around both. 2 teams that could win their respective divisions. So I'm really, really intrigued. I could see it going either way.
And I love how much we've talked about the AFC South already this year. Because we were labeling that as one of the worst divisions in football. It was the NFC South and the AFC South. The NFC South has lived up to that billing. Not a good division there. The Falcons just beat the Bills. Still not a good division.
Yeah.
Buccaneers have been super exciting. It's still a bad division. AFC South has been fun. It has been really fun. You have the Colts, and now you have the Jaguars playing really well. The Texans, they're figuring things out. They're up to, what are the Texans up to 2-3 now?
Yeah.
So they have a kind of a big game against Seattle on Monday Night Football. That's a much better division, because I think when you look at it, those 4 teams, it's still Houston as the team that can make the most damage potentially. They have the great defense. They have C.J. Stroud, who everybody still has the rookie year C.J. Stroud in their head a little bit, I think. And D'Amico Ryan's a good head coach. But then the 2 teams that have been the class of that division are not the Texans. It's the Jaguars and it's the Colts. Combined record of 9-3 right now. And I think both of them get it done this week. So props to the AFC South.
Yeah.
I think we talk about the primetime games now.
Yeah,
starting with
let's
Sunday
do it.
Night Football. Falcons 49ers. This is Falcons at San Fran. San Fran are 2.5-point favorites. Atlanta just coming off another big primetime game against the Bills where they dominated Buffalo. Yeah. Absolutely dominated Buffalo. Penix looked great. Now this is, what you have the intel, San Fran fan. Is it going to be Mac or Brock?
It's leaning Brock. Mac is also banged up. It's just a disaster with injuries, as everybody knows. But I would expect Brock to play as of Friday morning right now, from what I've read. But could be Mac, could be Adrian Martinez. I don't know. But I would expect it to be Brock.
I'm leaning Atlanta in this game, and it's not really anything that, because this is a typical letdown spot for them after the Bills on primetime. Now you have another primetime game. This would be like blind, just pick the other team, no matter who it was. But I have to believe the 49ers injuries catch up to them in a spot like this. It's the defensive side of the ball, because Shanahan and the offense are going to figure things out. They always do, and they've looked good with Mac. They've looked good with Brock in the past. Christian McCaffrey has really just been the safety valve for them. Give him the football. He's the best player on the field at all times. Just give him the ball and he'll make things happen. Kendrick Bourne has been involved. It's Jawan Jennings might be coming back this week. Kittle might be coming back this week. The offense I'm not really worried about with the injuries. It's the defense. And they have 2 returning starters. The Niners had 2 returning starters from last year's team, and it's 2 of the best defensive players in football. It was Fred Warner and it was Bosa. Now both of them are out for the entire season.
Yeah.
That is where I think that teams will start, even with a week remaining schedule, I think that is where teams start taking advantage of the San Francisco team, and that it gets a little less pretty for the 49ers and the injuries catch up to them. So I'm on the Falcons this week with the little bit of the upset win on the road, but it's really all to do with the injury stuff for the Niners on the defensive side.
No, it has just been quite ridiculous. And Fred Warner's the heartbeat, too. When you lose the heartbeat of your defense, it felt a lot different than the past injuries.
It's the green dot on the helmet. It's the signal caller on the defense.
And also one of the best linebackers ever.
Yeah, not to mention the talent.
You could already start fitting the gold jacket for Fred Warner. He's that good. I still think that the San Francisco 49ers are going to win this game, and it's more just because they find a way. I see it every single season in games like this. They lost to the Buccaneers on the road, who are so good. I think when they come back home, they're just going to find a way to get this done. And a lot of that, too, is expecting a regression from the Atlanta Falcons, who just had their best win of the season. Now they have to go to a hostile environment, one of the toughest places to play in the National Football League. But it's a toss-up. I have San Francisco.
I want to talk about the Buccaneers-Lions game the next night, Monday Night Football, one of the 2 Monday Night Football games. I need someone to explain to me why Detroit is 5.5-point favorites. Their secondary has been ravaged. Now they get no Brian Branch because of the fight he started at the end of that Chiefs-Lions game this past week. Baker has been, it doesn't matter who he's been throwing to, it doesn't matter what team he's been playing, he has just been carving up opponent secondaries, no matter who it's been.
Yeah.
He did it against a Seattle team with a very good defense. He did it against San Fran last week. He's been doing it week in and week out, leading game-winning drives. It's been incredibly impressive. Now he faces a Lions team that has, no names back there trying to cover the receivers. And I don't care how many Tampa receivers are hurt. You saw, I'm going to read some of these names that got involved against San Francisco last week in the passing game, because you had Mike Evans hurt, you had Chris Godwin hurt, you had McMillan that's been out, and you had Emeka get hurt halfway through that game. It's very possible that all 4 of them don't return for this one, but it doesn't matter. Their leading receiver was Cameron Johnson with 4 catches and 64 yards. He didn't have a catch the entire season before that. He played at Barton College. Cameron Johnson played at Barton College. I just think we talked about San Fran. You just said it doesn't really matter. It's just they figure out ways to do it. That's been Baker this year. And I think he just figures out ways to do it again. Tez Johnson had a huge touchdown last week. Who else was in the passing game? Sterling Shepard, Cade Otton. You're utilizing Rachaad White out of the backfield, even with Bucky Irving hurt. I think when we're talking about offenses where they just figure it out, it's Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers. And I think they do it again, even on the road. It's a perfect get-back spot for Detroit. It makes all the sense in the world for the Lions to win that football game, but I'm worried about the secondary. I really am.
I think that's completely fair. I'm picking the Lions, and it's not just a feel thing, but when the Buccaneers haven't lost a game on the road like this yet, I feel like at some point something's got to give. And Detroit's offense is super good. They have really impressed me this season. I expected them to be towards the top of the NFC preseason, but they've lived up to that. They had a letdown against the Kansas City Chiefs, but I also just think the Chiefs are really, really good. So at home, the 5.5 points is hard to ignore. I'm going to go with Detroit, but I'm right there with you. The Buccaneers have been, I think, the best story in the NFL this year, and Baker Mayfield should be at the top of the MVP talk. Because as Shay mentioned a couple weeks ago, he defines what an MVP means.
Defines the award right now.
This is one of my favorite games of the week.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. Monday night. There's tons of great games. Commanders-Cowboys is a game on Sunday that we didn't talk about. I'll have my eyes on that one as well. The other Monday night game is Texans-Seahawks. Texans 0-3 start. Now they're coming off a bye. This is a tough game at Seattle. The Seahawks defense has been great this year. They just slowed down Jacksonville's offense that had been playing very well. I'm high on this Seahawks team. I was just telling Aidan yesterday that I think there's still incredible value on them to win this NFC West. I've aired my concerns about San Fran and the Rams both on this show. The Cardinals they're not shooting themselves in the foot. They're unloading the entire clip onto their foot. So I'm not as high on the Cardinals as I was preseason. I think a loss like they had a couple weeks ago kind of kills the team, and I think we're seeing that. So I think the Cardinals are out of the picture. I think the Niners' injuries, despite the weak schedule, is going to push them farther out of the picture. The Rams' offense not clicking yet. I think the Seahawks have a legitimate shot. They're sitting there at 4-2 right now, tied with the 49ers and the Rams. I think they have a legitimate shot to take control of this division because of how good their defense is and how good their offensive playmakers around Sam Darnold have been. JSN is emerging as one of the best receivers in the entire league. They have the running back duo of Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. That offensive line is much better than last year, which is what held them back a season ago. And I think so if Sam Darnold can just stay the course and be a consistent quarterback, just a kind of a game manager of likes, I think their defense wins them a lot of games, and I think that's how this game goes too. Texans, I think a lot of people are thinking they're figuring it out. We haven't seen them lose in a while. It's been like a month since they've lost, but they are still 2-3. They still have those glaring issues. Their 2 wins are against the Titans team, where they've already lost their head coach, and a Ravens team that was absolutely decimated with injury and didn't have a starting quarterback playing. So I still got to see it from the Texans before I believe that they are back to what we think of when we hear Houston lately. So I like Seattle at home on Monday night.
I also like Seattle. I think the defense is just too much for that Houston front. Yeah. And that's been the story with C.J. Stroud and the Texans. This whole career there has been pressure on the quarterback. McDonald is a genius when it comes to scheming up pressures, scheming up coverages. Everything to me screams that place, Seattle, on primetime, it's always so tough to play in. And I really like the Seahawks. And I think they cover relatively easily. It's 3.5. I'd say they win by a touchdown plus.
Before we get out of here, we talked about the AFC South emerging as a fun division to keep an eye on. The AFC North, I think, is an incredibly intriguing division. It's always one of the funnest divisions to watch just because everybody hates each other. Every game, no matter if it's an 0-16 team playing a 16-0 team, you have to legitimately consider picking the 0-16 team. It's just how those games go.
Yeah.
And we saw that last night with the Steelers and the Bengals. We had Mike Tomlin, the Steelers head coach, just going off on the Browns front office for trading a division rival, your starting quarterback, when that's what they needed most. And it pays off for the Bengals. Getting Joe Flacco from the Browns, he looked great. It's almost like Jake Browning. We have this guy named Jamar Chase. We have this guy named T. Higgins. Why weren't you just throwing him the football time and time again? That's exactly what Flacco did. It was just like, where's number 1 at? I'm going to throw it to him. Absolutely torching Jalen Ramsey the entire night. That's why they win the football game. And if you're Pittsburgh, defense is what you're supposed to rest your hat on at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You can't score 30 points with Aaron Rodgers and lose that football game, and yet you did. And it makes things a lot more interesting. Bengals are now in like legitimate striking distance of the Steelers after that win at the top of the division. They're going to get Joe Burrow back at some point. Flacco looks very capable of keeping them afloat now. We were never high on the Steelers to begin with. I think it was a division that people were just kind of like, oh, okay, it looks like Steelers are just might just win the thing, no matter how good they are, because of how dysfunctional the Browns are. That's still the reality, but Lamar's going to come back. Who knows with what kind of vengeance that'll be. I still think that defense is going to hold them back significantly this year. But Lamar is coming back for Baltimore after the bye week this week. And now you have a Bengals team that looks like they can stay in the hunt until they get Joe Burrow back.
Yeah.
This division's up in the air again.
Completely. It's all about if the Bengals, that's a perfect word to use, if they can just stay afloat.
Yep.
Can you stay afloat until Joe Burrow comes back? Because if they're in striking distance and number 9 is back under center, they're one of the better teams in the AFC in a conference that is relatively wide open. I think the Chiefs are starting to establish themselves, but the Bills have been shaky. The Ravens aren't there. So there's a lot of room to make noise, and when you have as good as a receiving core as they do, they're always going to score points. So They have the Jets next week at home. That means they get back to 500 with a win. So I like it. That was a big win last night. It was a phenomenal game on primetime. And Joe Flacco has really changed this offense.
With that Steelers loss last night, there is now one team in the entire AFC that only has one defeat. It's the Indianapolis Colts. They are the only 5-1 team or better in the entire AFC. And you look at the NFC, there are two teams that have just one loss. One of them is the Packers, who also has a tie to their name, and the other one is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 5-1. I don't know. Nobody. You're kidding yourself. You're lying to people if you said that any of your NFL predictions are spot on right now at the beginning of the season, because it has been a crapshoot week in and week out. You have the Chiefs at 3-3. You have the Eagles falling apart now, back down to 4-2. The NFC West has three teams at 4-2 right now. It's fun. There is a ton of parity all the way through, and there's games to talk about every week because you don't know what's going to happen.
No, you don't. It's ultra competitive. It's really the best time to be an NFL fan. It's some of the most parity I've seen in quite some time. The NFL is usually pretty top heavy. Those juggernauts will stay juggernauts, and then you lean on maybe the team squeaking into the back of the playoffs, making a run. This year, you can list 10 different quote-unquote actual contenders because of how wide open it is.
I mean, the Patriots are winning the AFC East right now. So
crazy. Drake May, real good.
He's real. All right, that's all I have. That's all that you got. Another great show, prediction show. We will be back to semi-regular programming. We might have some things in the works in terms of added shows from the Blaze Radio studio, so that'll be something to keep an eye out. We might do a NBA preview show next Monday before the season starts on Tuesday. So a lot of things in the works for the Irish Hello. Stay tuned on that. All of our socials, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok.